Hi, everyone, and welcome to Lurking for Legends, a live video cast where we talk with people from all walks of the publishing industry, including spiders, apparently. I'm Christy Estrada's historical suspense and historical fantasy author, and my awesome co-hosts are epic fantasy author Richard H. Stevens and science fiction author and spider David M. Kelly. Lurking for
Hi.
Legends is an interactive broadcast, and we encourage viewers to chime in with what they hear with questions, any questions you might have for everyone here, or we are doing our much anticipated live read. Any questions you have about the books or for our authors themselves. So, as I just said, we're doing one of our favorite episodes, which is a live read. And we have two guests tonight. We'll be reading 3 works. 2 will be from our guests, and 1 will be from a co host. So, we have S.D. Huston here tonight, and we're going to be reading from her Tears of the Marigold. That is the 3rd book in her series, and I believe it's her latest release. And then we're also going to have J.D. Estrada, and we're going to read his Given to Fly, which is, I'm very excited for it. It's going to be so much fun. And then finally, we're going to read David M. Kelly's Hyperion Jones and the Olive Branch Caper. Wait till you hear what that's about. It's really just so much fun. So let's just go around and first introduce our new guests. So let's start with you, Shannon. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Okay. Well, hello, everyone. I write under the pen name of S.D. Huston, the author of the YA fantasy trilogy Clash of Goddesses, with Tears of the Marigold being the newest release. I am currently working on a romantic fantasy series that I hope to get published next year. And you can find me mostly on YouTube under my channel name of S.D. Huston, where I talk about my self-publishing journey and writing, and I really love the community there. So that's where I like to hang out.
Fantastic, Shannon. Thank you. So glad you're here. And then we also have JD, who I think has been on before. And if not, then that's very shameful. How are you, JD? Introduce yourself.
It's been a while, but I have been on here before. Greetings, fellow humans. My name is J.D. Estrada. I'm a Puerto Rican author who decided to move to Atlanta because I wanted to see the real life premiere of The Walking Dead. I'm also Agent 00 Bananas. I'm an indie author. I have published 19 books. I have many more on the way. I'm waiting for artworks and other goodness to be able to release actually 2 of them and final edits to that. And yeah, I write poetry, nonfiction, urban fantasy, middle grade, and a partridge in a pear tree.
Nice. Perfect. Yes. Yeah. JD has something for everyone. So I know that we're doing David's last, but did we decide who we're doing first? I already forgot.
JD, yeah, we're doing JD's first. Yeah.
JD, okay. Thank you.
Hence.
And I just want to mention that Dave
Spider
reminds me of a cross between Mario from Mario World and a spider.
No, Wario. He looks more like Wario.
Yeah, I would give Mario. You're right. Yeah. Mario's a bad guy. Yeah.
Perfect. So we're going to start with Given to Fly, which, correct me if I'm wrong, JD, is more of like a middle grade, really a lot of fun. Adults love it too, right?
Yeah, it is for children of all ages. I want to write a middle grade, something very light. I watched the movie Ponyo from Studio Ghibli a couple of years ago, and I was impressed that movie has no violence. And I was like, I want to write something that has no violence, and it's just smiling, inducing, and fun. And yes, it might have a little bit of tension, but no violence. So I went all in with this, with my first odd venture, where we visit Odd Manor. And the owner of Odd Manor is Fayed Oddstein, which is a character that's actually based on, it's a little bit of Cheshire Cat, a little bit of Willy Wonka, and a lot of me. It's basically my literary persona. And it is titled after my favorite Pearl Jam song, because why not?
Why not?
You can do that as long as I don't quote the lyrics in the book. I'm fine, but I can use the title. And if I get a C and D from them, I'm gonna print it and I'm gonna frame it.
I actually wrote an entire story where I have a clone of Elvis Presley, and every bit of dialogue in the book that he speaks is basically song titles from his books. I mean, from his songs, and that's all his dialogue. It's all song titles because you can't copyright a title.
Exactly.
Perfect.
Although, what was it? There was a that's in a whole other ball of wax. Someone wanted to copyright a word a couple of years back for a title, and it's like saying, yes, I own the word door.
Yeah. Are you talking about Romance Gate? Yeah.
Yeah. I forget exactly what it was, but it was cute. It was cute.
I think it was the word cocky.
I think so too.
Yeah.
Yes, it was.
It's
It was
like
cocky. Yes,
but
I
it takes
remember.
someone very cocky to try to pull that off. So
The irony of it all. Exactly.
So I just want to take a poll of you guys here. I tried to be a combination of Willy Wonka and J.D. Estrada. I'm not sure if I quite pulled it off. I've got the goatee, I've got the glasses. Maybe the hair is a bit too much, but
It's beautiful. I love it.
you're looking magnificent, and the glasses are.
This is what you have to look forward to in about 20 years, JD. You're going to look yourself good.
If I look that good in 20 years, I'm good. I'm good, buddy. Anyways, to set up the scene, so basically, I chose one of my favorite chapters from the book. The book starts off with John and his family moving to the Pacific Northwest because John's grandmother, she passed away, and she left a house to the family, and they had some needs. So basically, they're just moving into this new house. He finds out that there's no magic door in the house. There's no portal. There's nothing. There's not a wardrobe. And he's like a little bummed, but he's having fun and he's playing around. And suddenly, there's like a cliff near the house, and he looks over, and there's a lagoon with a huge tree that has a house on its side. And then he sees a shadow, and he freaks out because he thinks someone's in distress. And he dives down and tries to go, see if everyone's okay. As soon as he enters, gravity reverses. He falls on his side, and he realizes that this is the start of an adventure. He shared with Veit Ottstein, the owner of Odd Manor, that his dream is to fly. And he's like, then let's talk to some people. And it's basically going to different rooms and parts of the house to try to help this young boy fly. They go down to the basement because why not? And after encountering some dust bunnies, they come to the scene that we're at right now. So the narrator says, and off they went, walking along one of the corridors in the basement. Didn't take long for the atmosphere to change, and it did not escape John's perception how suddenly everything started to look very gray. The ground also seemed to become a bit sticky. Faintly in the distance, some music could be heard playing, a lovely winding melody on an instrument he couldn't identify. He knew it was a string instrument, but had no idea what was making that lovely sound. Regardless of how pleasant it sounded, though, his attention focused instead on the texture of whatever he was stepping on.
What is this mess?
John asked.
Color and material are the choice of the current tenants, but this is no mess. You're just not used to walking on this material. Maybe through it, and I suspect you've never enjoyed the experience if that's ever happened to you.
The boy was left at a loss for words at the odd things this man said, but continued to walk regardless. When they reached the corner, it became very present to John that he had been looking at his feet all the while to ensure he didn't trip. That's because when he finally did look up, there was a winding staircase the color of sodium gray, which led up to a humongous pod that hung from the rafters 15 feet up in the air. Suddenly, he knew what the material was. John could only react in the barest of stuttering whispers.
That looks like a spider's nest, and a big one, too.
Veit looked up and squinted his eyes as if making sure of what was being said at that moment.
Well, I can only find one problem with that assessment, my young man. It's not like a spider's nest. It is one.
Then, as if he hadn't confirmed John's greatest fears, the bearded man climbed up the wet flight of stairs as if he were skipping on a prairie. The boy ran up the stairs to try and stop the man from knocking, but found Veit waiting patiently in front of the door as if waiting.
Don't knock on the door,
said John in his whisper scream. The man looked at him a bit confused.
Why would I knock?
Before the sound of the last word the man had spoken had faded, the door began to open, slowly, steadily. John didn't know what to expect to come out of a spider nest this large. Thoughts of monsters crawling through his brain creeped to his consciousness, and for the first time in his life, John found himself sweating out of fear as he'd read so often. It was deathly cold. The door opened and a soft purple light shone from within, while a silhouette stood upon 8 thin legs.
The boy is apparently unaware of how spider webs work,
Said the sheer silk voice with a heavy Russian accent, quite like a villain from one of those 00 spy movies his father George was such a fan of. Although larger than John, the legs that held the spider were far from the hairy limbs he'd been creeped out by when it came to most of the spiders he'd seen. Each wore web stockings that reached up into a black and purple dress. 2 delicate arms held each other at the hands, while the svelte figure showed the curves of a woman instead of the lines of an insect. The arms were also pale gray-white, but an elegant hue rather than a sickly one. Most surprising to John was the warm smile that looked far too motherly to be considered a threat. The eyes above the noseless smile looked at John with kindness, not hunger, and her voice this time spoke to Fayed while the eyes continued to consider the child.
You didn't tell him we were arachnids, did you, dear Fayette?
The bearded man gave a rascally smile.
It might have slipped my mind, but maybe I just want to teach lessons in dropping expectations and accepting people as they are. How are you, Natasha, dear?
Fayed stepped in to hug the beautiful yet still alarmingly large spider.
I know we're in a basement, but it's been weeks since you visited.
The spider told the man while taking him in the warm embrace. Although John couldn't see Fayed's face, he could hear a bit of sadness in his breathing. The spider woman responded by caressing the back of his head.
There, love. I know how hard you work. Don't think it doesn't go unnoticed.
Fayed finally let go of the embrace and looked at Natasha with a misty-eyed smile.
Thank you. But I must tell you, I am sorry for bringing it up, but do you know that it's a double negative, right?
Natasha smiled and gave a playful grr while accompanying that with a punch to Fayed's arm.
For this, I stopped playing my music?
That was you playing that beautiful music?
Asked John, still trying to make some sort of sense out of all of this. The spider woman stopped her assault on the man's arms and turned to the boy.
You like music?
She asked with the gentleness of silk.
Yes, I do, ma'am.
Natasha beamed at his response.
How lovely. And what lovely manners. You should learn a thing or two from this wise child, my dear.
Fayed did something John didn't think he was capable of doing. He wasn't really sure what to make of this odd man as he blushed and rubbed the back of his neck.
Come with me. What was your name?
Asked the beautiful spider.
John.
At seeing the fear in him, she had to let out a giggle.
Don't worry, John. We may be large, but we don't eat humans in this spider household. Come here so I can play you a melody.
She reached out her gray porcelain hand, and to John's amazement, it was warm to the touch. Not only that, but her smile was so kind and genuine that the fact that her eyes were all black and she had no nose didn't bother him in the slightest. Natasha led him to a very comfortable lounge chair. It was made of webbing but did not stick to him. Seeing the surprise on the boy's face, she gave another giggle.
Brother Fayette discovered a way to sand webbing so it doesn't stick. He left the floor outside with some texture to ensure that no one slips. He's a bit naughty, but he means well and always does his best to think of others.
John looked at his host and once again was surprised at how bashful he became. Some people aren't good at receiving praise or compliments. That was something he'd heard his mom say as he spoke of his dad. Looking back to Natasha, he saw her sit on what most closely resembled a stool, although it really wasn't. To her left, there stood an intricate harp made entirely of webbing. To her right, there was what looked like a huge double bass with thick gray strings. At her feet sat a small bass drum, and on her lap, John saw she had one of those Japanese lap guitars he'd discovered in a kung fu movie where 2 masters battle in a chess garden. Every instrument was gray, and Natasha seemed to be sitting on a small cloud due to the contrast of colors. In addition to beautiful, he had to admit to himself that she looked regal on her musical throne.
This piece is called Octodriem.
With a deep breath, she allowed the music to come from deep within, and all of her delicate legs stood in attention. The first to move were her legs to the right, where one pressed on the bass, while the other plucked out a plum-rich bass line. It was deep, rich, yet very sweet. Morning bright chords bloomed from her left, following the beat of the bass line. All 4 eyes were closed, and she smiled a smile only music lovers and musicians can understand and appreciate. With the rhythm weaving a musical tale, she was fully immersed in the groove of the music. Maintaining the rhythm perfectly, Natasha put her hand on the strings of the lap guitar and began plucking staccato whispers of notes like melodic rain falling down from a symphony of clouds. Natasha's movement was as enchanting as her music, and the dance of inspiration flowed through her. While the rhythm maintained a steady route, notes continued to merge and grow into long stretching legatos. John didn't know where one note began and another ended. He smiled through his breath and then found himself being led back into the comfortable chair by the melody until the final notes tickled into the end of the song. When he opened his eyes, he met all four of Natasha's eyes, but didn't jump. He wanted to say this was the most beautiful song he'd ever heard, but another gruff voice with a far thicker accent stole the sentiment.
That shall always be my favorite, Vesdemoya.
John turned to his left and saw Fayed standing next to a much hairier spider that was creepy, crawly, and thickly mustachioed. He only had two eyes, but they were large and round, and his mustache curved so that it looked like a set of pinchers. He creepy crawled to the beautiful woman spider and gave her a warm, loving kiss. Behind her, one of her 8 legs flexed exactly like women did in older movies during romantic scenes where kissing was involved. Unlike those movies, though, other legs began to swirl in a circular, ballerina-like motion. After they finished their long kiss, she stood from her musical throne.
Dinner's almost done. I'd invite you in, but I didn't know we were having visitors over, so the menu is rather spider-focused. It smells just about ready, I think.
As children are inclined to do, John once again spoke his mind.
But you don't have a nose. How can you smell?
Fayed blushed about 40 shades of varying colors.
You're muted, Richard.
Well, I'm so sorry, Natasha and Boris and JD.
The woman spider giggled further.
Don't be, dear Fayed. No offense was given, so none need be taken. He's merely a curious child, and we must always encourage that. Boris will surely tell you the same. We spiders don't smell through a nose, John. Rather, we use our legs. I know it sounds odd, but every species is very particular, and trust me, that you need a nose to smell is quite as weird to us.
John processed the information and nodded as he assimilated it, visibly making an effort to understand that what is normal for humans need not be normal for any other species. And come to think of it, humans were pretty weird to say the least.
That's the look of a man of science,
said Boris excitedly.
I know that look all too well, but please tell me, to what do we owe the pleasure of this lovely visit?
Fayed stood next to John and put an arm over the boy's shoulder.
Our young friend wishes to fly, but his human condition is a bit of a challenge when it comes to that particular wish.
Said Boris, twirling both ends of his pincer-like mustache. You could almost see the thoughts flashing throughout his brain. John did feel the need to clarify something.
Gnome tried helping us out, but it was pretty hard to understand him.
Yes, good old Gnome. Brilliant mind, although you probably just need to be a bit older to understand him better. The magic of his intelligence is that no matter how much he knows about everything, which, might I add, is a lot, he always talks to people in a way that they can understand whatever he's talking to them about. But he's so much information to share that it can be overwhelming at times. I may have something that can help us.
Without another word, the large harrier spider spun around and went through the loose webbing to another room.
Now what?
John asked.
Please do my husband the honor of joining him in his laboratory,
said Natasha. And that is the scene. So, we go into Boris's laboratory, and he has a specimen that might have some answers for John.
That was great. So creative. I really enjoyed that.
You guys are amazing. That my cheeks hurt from smiling.
I can't stop looking at Dave and and the Marigold accent at the same time.
That is so great.
Fantastic.
Oh man,
Excuse
a
me.
mustache and a spider crown. I don't know how much
While I
better it can get.
divest. That's kind of painful.
But much
And now I
appreciated.
shall-
That was stellar, and I love the spider. I did not expect that or Richard to go all in.
That's really great.
I bet Dave had got no writing done this week. That's all he's done is work on it.
Possibly.
His wife's going, "What'd you do all day?"
Practice to be a
Costume change.
spider.
Anita imparted it's because of Boris and Natasha and Boris the Spider from the song from The Who called Boris the Spider, and Natasha Schneider, who was she was a pianist for several bands, including 11, and she actually played with Queens of the Stone Age. She was very lovely, and she died from breast cancer about, if I'm not mistaken, 9 years ago. So I just wanted to, I love doing little tributes to different musicians. She's someone that most people won't know who she is. And it's just me trying to go like, look her up. She's awesome.
Yeah.
That's great.
And I'm just about to post the link to JD's book down below. So Alexandra, if you want to grab it, you can grab it from that link.
Well, that's awesome, Christy. So a lot of people, you'll see that it looks like it's coming from me, but most of these comments are not coming from me because Christy and Dave are a lot better at manipulating the keyboard while we're on live. It's just because of streaming through a certain channel that my name shows up there. Nice curls, Dave. Oh, look at Dave. He's oh wow,
Looking great.
I now I know for sure Dave did not get any writing done. Or it's not Dave, is it? It's Davina.
Oh, there we go.
I like
No,
that.
it's Luke.
I was gonna say, yeah, he's dressed as Lou.
Okay. So now we are on to Tears of the Marigold by S.D. Huston, Shannon. And that is the third book in your series, the most recent released, right?
Yep,
Beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
Nice covers.
I made it.
It's really nice. Yeah, it looks good. All right. So tell us what is going on in this scene.
Okay, so this is a scene that happens right after a culmination of Lou and Rose's relationship. From the very first book, Lou was a leprechaun and kidnapped Rose, as he was very antagonistic with Rose, and she didn't like him at all. But then he remembered he was a god and turned back into a god at the end of the book. And then the second book is trying to prove his love, but he dies, and she has to go rescue him.
I'm dead?
No, she brought him back. But so this book, they still have this contentious relationship, but they do love each other. And the scene happens right after, for the first time, that they've made love. And the dragon in the scene, Pashta, it was Lou's best friend when he was a leprechaun. And he remembers Rose in all the different forms that the leprechaun would turn her into. And he liked to turn her into a mouse and a dog and different things like that. So that's all kind of plays into it for this scene.
But they made love in human form, right?
Oh, yes. They're both human now, and yeah, done with that.
Cool.
All right. Rose shared a smile with Lou as they headed up the mountainside. He held one of her hands as he led the way. When they breached the forest line and faced the glass house that melded into the side of the mountain, they took a moment to stare. Rose was grateful to stop. She honestly thought she would feel a whole lot worse looking at the house, but somehow standing here with Lou as the god and not the leprechaun made her feel safe and the house insignificant. She pulled on his hand when he took one step forward. She had shared her plan as they had lain together in a small clearing.
Do we have to go inside?
No.
She shivered at the intrusion in her mind. She tamped down any stray thoughts, and her cheeks burned with flames. A great rumble shook the mountain, and loose rocks fell down the side, tapping the glass on the way to the ground. Rose pulled her hand free and reached for her wineskin. As the dragon climbed out of a high cave opening and meandered down, she took a drink. Before his many legs clicked along the packed earth, touching more level ground, Pashta twisted his horned head to look at them.
I'm so happy to see you.
Rose winced at the voice in her head, but worked on keeping her thoughts hidden. Somehow the dragon could read her mind. He shared his thoughts as well, similar to how sky animals spoke with her, except that his images were accompanied by words, which made the messages so much clearer. Rose guessed his ability to read her mind came from being both a sky animal and a more sentient being than the average bird. When the dragon snaked his way to them, he stood over them at nearly 8 feet high, his black scales absorbing all the light in the small clearing before the glass walls. Pashta smiled, a gesture that seemed more likely to say that he was ready to take a bite of something, where his snout thinned, jagged teeth glinted.
It's good to see you alive once more, Lou.
Returning the dragon's smile with one of his own, Lou touched the side of his neck.
I'm sorry I didn't properly say goodbye, my friend. I'm glad Rose told you what happened.
Yes, Rose shared quite a bit.
The dragon's great yellow eyes rolled toward her. Her cheeks heated again. Furiously, she tried to think of anything else.
Please, please do not see.
Too late, Rose. I saw everything before you even made it up the mountain.
You watched us?
The dragon chuckled.
I didn't need to watch you when your mental messages were so clear.
She put her hands on her hips, even though her face still felt hot.
You didn't have to eavesdrop or mind drop.
The minute I saw Lou in your thoughts, I couldn't stay out. But if you ask me, I still think you would have made prettier babies with fineness.
She threw her hands up. You do know this is my true form. Oh, wait, that was... Sorry. She threw her hands up.
You do know this is my true form.
Lou the leprechaun had been fond of changing her into a dog to do her business, and before he'd gotten Fiennish back, she had looked a lot like his lost hound. The dragon released steam from his nose.
You couldn't have chosen an uglier creature to be.
Lou took a step back, arms spread wide, and smiled.
Hey now, don't you love me like this?
Pashta tilted his head to look him up and down with a single eye. Then he shook his head like a dog shaking off water.
No. After what I saw in her head, I liked the leprechaun better. His rear wasn't so pink, and I never wanted to take a bite of the leprechaun.
Lou laughed a deep belly laugh.
I've missed you.
Rose tucked back her hair with mild irritation.
We didn't come for this. We need a favor, Pashta.
Oh?
And in that moment he uttered the syllable, she thought of Pala Nafaha and the magical dome protecting it, created with her sister's magic.
Do you think you could break the magic?
He nodded his great head.
It's possible.
He looked between the two of them.
I don't get involved in the wars of men, though.
Rose's heart stalled. If Pashta wouldn't help, then she might have no choice but to answer Cronus' summons for a farce of a truce.
However, I will do this one favor for you.
He looked pointedly at Rose.
For saving my friend.
Pasha shook his worm-like body until leathery wings unfolded from the sides.
I'll see you there.
With a great flap of his wings stirring up dust and small rocks, the dragon leapt into the sky. Lou made a portal, and Rose followed him through to come out into the warrior of Valor's camp. Lou bellowed over the din of men and creatures.
The dragon comes to take down the wall. Prepare yourselves.
All throughout the encampment, warriors yelled Lou's words forward, and they scrambled to throw on gear and gather in squads. Most already wore their armor, but they tightened straps, checked their weapons, and neared the front of the camp, facing the palisade from 50 feet away. Several brought forward a great tree trunk shorn of all its limbs and leaves. This they dropped to the ground between them with a heavy thud. Ardgol found Rose and Lou, the corner of his eyes tight, but a smile on his lips.
Perhaps you found the best way to save yourself, Rose.
She gave one nod.
If this works. But the dragon only stays long enough to take down the magic if he's able to. Your army will have to do the rest.
She'd barely finished her last word when the sound of swooping wings carried on a strong wind, followed by a thunderous bellow. The sinuous body of Pashta weaved through the sky like an eel in water. He breathed a line of fire outward. As he closed the distance to the wall, he slowed down and pulled his head back, steam linking from his nose and mouth. He shot a steady stream of fire over the palace, clearly defining the invisible dome where it hit. The magic's barrier shimmered in golden patches that laced out over the palace where fire touched. The shimmering continued for several moments before dissipating. Pasta flew past the palace before circling back around to shoot more fire. Huge sparks burst up from the magical barrier, disintegrating the shield in large gaps. One last explosion and the entire barrier fell. Cheers rose from the warrior of Valor's camp. Then a group of men ran forward with the great tree trunk and slammed it into the wooden gates. Rose twisted her head up to find the dragon, thinking perhaps he'd left already.
Not yet, little mouse.
Then she was in his mind's eye as he circled back. The shock of seeing what he saw made her compliant in the invasion. She followed him down as he swooped low enough to lift one of Cronus's men from the palisade.
I thought you weren't going to take sides.
The great dragon beat his wings to climb back up into the sky. He threw back his head to gulp the struggling warrior into his gullet.
Just a little snack.
Pashta disappeared back the opposite way from the palace. The connection between herself and the dragon slowly faded until she saw through her own eyes again. Lou had moved closer to the causeway, his skin glowing golden as he drew power into himself. The men with the battering ram stood back at his command. Raising his arms, Lou dropped them in a rush, drawing faint symbols in the air. The gate imploded with a loud explosion. Once the air cleared, Ardgol's men ran forward, weapons drawn, yelling loudly. Before they crossed half the causeway, Cronus's warriors met them, and the clash of steel on steel resounded. Rose grabbed a proffered staff as she called the elements into herself. She stepped forward to send out a wave of energy, but stalled. In the melee of bodies, she couldn't tell friend from foe in several instances. And she'd rather not kill the warrior of valor's men. 2 of Cronus's men broke through to rush Ardgol, and the Dagda jumped in front of the warrior of valor. The good god, the father figure of the Tuatha De Danann, looked ruthless, the scar slashed across half his face pulsing bright red. He swung his heavy wooden club, the Lung Mor, capable of killing with one end and resurrecting the dead with the other. For this fight, he touched the first man with a light tap on his shoulder, and the man dropped to the ground in a heap. That caused the second man to stall, but his forward momentum took him right into the path of the Dagda's next swing, and he similarly plunged to the ground, sliding past the hulking god. The Dagda gave her a wide grin, which she returned, until 2 more men rushed past him to take on Ardgol. The Allfather saw her face, and he twirled around to attack, but the warrior of valor danced between them with his sword swinging between them. He laughed.
I may not have the power of life and death in my club, but I can still have a good time.
His good cheer brought a smile to Rose. A loud clamor drew her attention, but she had barely turned before someone or something knocked her down. The ground rushed up to meet her, and everything went black.
Very exciting.
That was awesome.
JD's last line was perfect for his banana. That was great. That was really good.
Thank you.
I really
Damn,
appreciate
that thing's warm.
Dave, I want you to wear that at our next book signing.
And I should have said, I should have said that Dave was Lou, which he was known to be one of the most beautiful Tuatha De Danann.
Well, of
and
course.
He said that the sun rose in his hair and that he had blonde hair.
Perfect.
Yeah, that wasn't just me showing off. Yeah. Oh, dear.
Right.
I don't know. Should I say anything more about the book, or I don't know what the?
No, I think
Okay, that was good. Okay.
Yeah, I think we're good, and I'm going to pop your link down in the comments.
Awesome. Oh,
You mix a few different kinds of what is the word I'm looking for?
Mythologies.
Yeah,
Lord?
that's it. You mix a few different kinds. That's really cool.
Well, the Crom Dubh, I'm not exactly sure how you say it, but he was a figure in the Irish mythology associated with a god who wanted the sacrifice of firstborn kids. And Cronus, of course, ate his kids. And so there was this person who wrote a paper on how the two were probably the same. So I kind of had him I had Cronus being all these roles where he's been linked to the same in different mythologies. Yeah.
Oh, that is really cool. That is really unique. I love it.
Thank you.
oh, someone's getting ready for the next one.
This is as purple as I can get. Thanks for purple.
All right, we're into Hypernia Jones now, aren't we? Hyperia Jones. I always say Hypernia. I don't know why I say Hypernia. Sorry, dude.
I don't know why. But
If she got a hernia, it would be a hypernia.
There you go.
there you go.
But if it was low, it'd be a Lopernia.
The battle of the puns.
All right, Dave. So if you want to set us up for Hyperia Jones.
Okay. So Hyperia Jones, she's a bit of a strange character. She's a septopoid, so she's descended from a kind of octopus type creature, and she has tentacles on her head and purple skin. she can change her skin color and make herself look like all sorts of different things and different races. And by day, she's a pro wrestler, and by night, she's an interstellar jewel thief. And the current scene is, or the scene that we're about to read, is basically one where she's out just kind of socializing with some of the other wrestlers, and they go to an antique shop to basically, and the idea is they're basically just going to look around and do some shopping, but she's actually casing the joint for a future burglary that she's planning to commit. And so the people who are in the group are Hyperia, who I just mentioned, Chaos Rhino, who's another wrestler who basically looks like a human rhino hybrid, Atsuno Moon, who's another wrestler. She's dark-haired and diminutive, much like Shannon here. And she's an expert in every form of martial arts. Zavara, I'm afraid, JD, you've only got one line, but you are, of course, a wrestler, charming, elegant. You dress with floppy musketeer-type hats with
That's nice.
so perfect. And Nyla, played by Richard, is a grey-skinned, wrinkled old man with
whoa! I'm getting typecast here. What the heck?
Nyla, he's the antique dealer. He's a wrinkled old man with an electric monocle, and he's got connections with organized crime. So that's where we start.
That's where we start.
Exciting. I just need to take a second, and I should be with you.
Multi-purpose banana. That's right. That is one multi-purpose banana. Most bananas just get eaten. They don't get this much fun. This is way better. Is that 3D printed, David?
That's awesome.
Oh my god.
Now that's a banana.
No writing done.
I think he sleeps in the doghouse all week too. Yeah.
Wow. Okay. Wow. You're right, Randy. We are having too much fun.
Never too much.
Okay, Dave, I take it back. I don't want you to wear the wig. I want you to wear the rhino. Maybe the rhino face and the wig.
That's amazing. Seriously, that's amazing.
That is awesome.
Wow.
So Dave's next book won't be released until 2024 because he's been busy.
Super busy.
Doing arts and crafts for lurking for legends.
Very important. It takes all month, you know.
I should have stole the Minion's eye. That would have been great.
Perfect. Okay.
All right, Dave, whenever you're ready, you can take us away if you can actually talk through that thing.
Oh, I can talk, but Christy's actually going to do the narration as well.
Ah, all right.
She's Siberia, and it's in a
Christy's
viewpoint.
Siberia. Right.
Yeah. So apologies in advance if I pronounce anything sillily, but here we go.
That's even better.
That's even better. The store was an old-fashioned looking brick and concrete affair clinging against a hillside with an overabundance of fake columns at the front, no doubt designed to impress the clientele. It looked ugly and reminded me of a Lacundan jail. The columns, as well as the broad steps leading up to the wide main entrance, were dressed in pure white alabaster that looked pink now the sun was dropping lower. It gave the building a rather feminine appearance that I felt sure wasn't what the designers intended. The building had originally been the Signorito family residence before the lean years hit, and I couldn't imagine slam candy dealers putting on such a display, even as a cover for their illicit activities. I locked arms with Rhino, and Atsuno did the same with Zavara as we strolled toward the entrance. As we crossed the wide paved area, I did a rapid assessment of the external security. Cameras, motion sensors, heat sensors, and theta band scanners. All the usual stock and trade of a decent security system, Apart from the dummy cameras placed around the parking lot with high capacity power lines running to them, and lenses that were clearly designed to project X slice beams if triggered. The doors opened as we approached, and a weaselly man stepped out. His skin looked stretched and thin, likely as a result of one too many rejuven treatments. But his eyes had a glint in them, as hard as Bzini borodite. An electronic monocle was fitted to the side of his head, making him look like he'd been caught by a badly timed punch.
Welcome, dear friends. Signorito Consulting Fine Arts and Antiquities is pleased to entertain esteemed members of the renowned FIA.
He glanced into the air, checking the entourage swarming around us in a variety of air and surface vehicles, not to mention several dozen on foot.
I'm Nilo, a humble proprietor of this modest establishment. It's a pleasure to see you. Brought so many friends.
Just the four of us,
said Zavara, escorting Atsuno up the steps.
Of course.
Nilo tilted at the waist in a bow that should have been accompanied by a loud creaking. After passing through the entrance chamber, decorated with paintings by old fakers, we entered the main display room. The walls were pale but rich off-white, with burgundy highlights, covered in a bewildering number of artworks, ancient weaponry, and more X-Slice projectors. Catsonic surveillance detectors lined the cornice like jewels. These people definitely believed in overkill when it came to security. Nilo led us around, cooing over each piece as if it were one of his children.
Ooh.
Chaos Rhino tapped his hoof and scratched ineffectually at the rhino hide. But Atsuno and Zavara listened to the flamboyant descriptions as though each exhibit would unveil the mysteries of the universe. I showed an interest in everything. The several items were so obviously fake, they looked like they'd been made by a child.
A legacy of the ancient Clonf dynasty, and according to the original owners, has a provenance that runs all the way back to Earth, the famous Terran homeworld.
Famous, certainly. Mythical, also equally likely. At least 80% of collectibles I'd ever seen were listed as having some connection to Earth. According to Terrans, everything of value derived from there, which made it even more incredible that they'd managed to lose their treasured planet. As we toured the displays, I surreptitiously examined the security. Like the systems outside, it was a combination of passive and active sensors mixed with badly concealed weaponry. In many ways, it was more extensive than the setup at a bank, which, given the owner's other activities, wasn't too surprising. Paranoia is such a motivating force. All of that meant nothing, though, after I caught a glimpse of the alarm system control box through a side door. I didn't need more than a glance to identify it as a Blockham controller, unmistakable with its 3 large vertically mounted buttons.
What do you think of this hype?
Atsuno held a small golden figurine, distorted beyond any normally accepted proportions for a humanoid, with wings sprouting from its shoulders instead of its arms. The figure was half kneeling, reaching forward dramatically, which to me looked like it was in pain. I recognized it as one of Varuka's famous golden earth angels, or most likely a passable imitation. Looks fake to me, I said. Nilo jumped, then sniffed prodigiously.
I assure you, madame, Signorito Consulting is extremely thorough in verifying the provenance of its exhibits and is highly selective which items it offers its patrons.
Oh, sure. I guess. I wouldn't know. He sniffed again and started describing a fake Swillen Dynasty vase that had been sculpted by a clumsy butcher wielding a shovel.
This is perhaps one of the best items of early Swillen ceramics to be found in Gulplades, and a fine example of the renowned blue glaze. It's kind of faded to green a little bit. These items are deservedly famous for. This came to us by way of...
That's it! I squealed, running forward to pick up a small silver jug in the shape of some animal I didn't recognize. Nilo turned toward me, and his electronic monocle snapped over his eye with a dramatic click.
Oh, yes, madame. Has a discerning eye. That is the 50th century cow creamer.
Mm.
in the Art Deco style of Dutch origin.
It's beautiful. I gazed in fake adoration at the monstrous object. Is it really for sale? Nilo smiled plastically.
Certainly, madame. Everything has its price.
Atsuno and the others were staring at me as though I'd announced I was leaving fire to marry the Uberkaiser.
Better check it, Hype.
She said.
Looks like 68th century Yukonian to me.
I frowned, forcing a fake tear from one eye. You don't think it's real? Nilo drew himself up to his full 155-centimeter height and pulled on the tips of his tightly curled mustache.
Oh, I need Dave's prop for this. I assure madame that we deal only in the highest quality collectibles. If you have any doubts, check the hollow mark.
Hollow marks are a universal, non-destructive inscription used throughout the realms to authenticate antiquities. Oh yes, I suppose so. I turned the shapeless metal pot in my hands, staring at it blankly. The tiny crystals that produced the hollow mark was fused to the bottom, but I deliberately ignored it, turning the object over several times.
Here.
Nilo plucked the creamer from my hands, flipped it upside down, and tapped the crystal. A display appeared in the air, projected from the crystal. It contained a description, points of interest, and an ownership log going back as far as could be traced, along with genetic signatures of each owner. While hollow marks could be faked, it wouldn't be worth the effort for something as low value as the creamer. I grabbed at it again and passed it over to Chaos Rhino. What do you think, sweetie? Is it worth it? Rhino looked confused, but it passed in a fraction of a second. He was too experienced in wrestling improvisation to let anything throw him for long.
I don't know, babe.
He held up the creamer in one giant hand.
Looks kind of cheap for you.
Aw, you know me so well, Rhinekins. I giggled, clinging on to his thick, scaly arm. Let's look around some more. Chaos Rhino turned, and I accidentally caught his leg with mine. He staggered against one of the shelves, and for a second, it looked like everything was going to topple. Nilo jumped forward, and so did I, and together we managed to stabilize the display.
I beg of you, sir, please do be careful. We have a strict policy of demanding compensation for any and all breakages. I would hate for you to be financially embarrassed.
Rhino managed to look sheepish, even through his skin suit, and I felt a little bad for having caused the near calamity. After that, we allowed Nilo to show us the rest of the collection, with Chaos Rhino staying respectfully back from the objects. I squealed and lavished my full attention on all of them, being careful to touch every piece.
Now, if I may, allow me to show you our centerpiece, or perhaps I should say the piece de resistance.
Nilo ushered us toward a side chamber, but halted Chaos Rhino with a wave.
Please forgive me, but the area is far too compact to manage the gentleman's largesse.
Rhino snorted, but agreed to wait in the main hall, while the rest of us shuffled in. The small chamber was intimately lit with amber lights. The walls were bare, completely free of any type of decoration, and in the center stood a polished Circinian blue oak table, the deep azure wood decorated with exquisite barodium inlays. On top of the table was a fine velvet square with a small, wafer-thin, genuine Swillen Dynasty bowl sitting on it. Inside the bowl was a shapeless and unimpressive crystal about the size of a mouse, nestled in a bed of Volian moss.
This, ladies and gentlemen, is the famous Algernon's flower,
whispered Nilo, as if in awe of the display.
Wow, it looks a little mundane right now. In 113 years, it will blossom into the most brilliant of spectacles. It is undoubtedly one of the most select items in our collection, and I assure you, I don't boast when I say one of the rarest items in all the 17 realms.
I yawned enthusiastically. What a letdown. A stupid lump of rock. Atsuno looked at me sharply.
Hype, where are your manners?
She turned back to Nilo.
I'm sure it's incredibly beautiful, Mr. Nilo.
Well, I'm going to go look at that creamer thing again. I swished out of the small display room, eyeballing Chaos Rhino. Come on, that thing's a swindle. I led him back to the ugly creamer and picked it up again, then whispered to him, buy this for me, okay? He looked at the price and swallowed. It wasn't that expensive, but everything there was carrying collector rates.
I can't afford it, Hype.
He whispered
You
back.
totally screwed me in a game of droid despair on the way out here. I'm broke till payday.
I'll pay for it, but it'd look better if you did. Part of my kayfabe, okay? He nodded, then stopped as one of the horns caught on a chandelier, making it rattle dangerously.
Do be careful, sir,
said Nilo, re-emerging from the side room.
Sure.
Rhino lowered his head and stomped a little, and Nilo's wrinkled skin turned a much paler shade of gray.
I'd like to get this for my lady here.
Chaos Rhino pointed to the creamer.
Anything for you, babe.
I clapped my hands and wrapped my arms around his massive bicep, pulling him closer. Oh, thank you. You're the best, better than all the rest. As I cuddled with him, I surreptitiously slipped a roll of drubles into his belt pouch, patting him to let him know what was going on. Nilo beamed, but it was obvious he was unhappy to have spent so much time with us for so little.
The catalog price on that is $350, but I'd be willing to let you steal it for $325, as I'm such a pro wrestling fan.
Chaos Rhino glowered at Nilo, lowering his head farther and snorting loud enough to blow back the salesman's gray hair.
Oh, did I say $325?
Nilo straightened his hair again.
I meant $300, of course.
Chaos Rhino scraped the ground with a hoof, still crouched low so his horns were pointed directly at Nilo.
$275?
$250.
Rhino grunted.
And I want it gift wrapped.
Yes, sir. Naturally. $250 it is.
Chaos Rhino winked at me, and I smiled back. I didn't have the heart to tell him that the rare creamer was worth no more than 70 drubles, even if it was genuine. None of the others were tempted by anything, and given the prices, they were smart not to be. But I'd done everything I needed to do, and was more than happy to head back to the Sentien. Phase 2 was about to begin.
Yay!
David and I are always in relationships. Everyone puts it
Yeah.
I think people are starting to talk.
Yeah. My wife is not happy about this.
I think she's ecstatic. She's finally getting ready. Oh, sorry.
That was fantastic. That was all three were a lot of fun in totally different ways. That was great. Really enjoyed all of them.
I looked around the house forever looking for a monocle. This was going to be the one strapped to my head because it was supposed to be a big one, but I couldn't figure out how to do
I
that.
can't believe that, David. That's amazing.
I actually was going to. You can actually buy a rhino head mask that's realistic on Amazon, and I was going to buy it, but it wouldn't get delivered in time. And so I had a bit more of a look around, and I found this, and it's printed. It's just printed on paper, but then you glue it all together to make like the 3D mask.
Fantastic.
It's amazing.
Wow.
It really is. It looks so good.
That's awesome.
Love it.
So thank you, JD and Shannon, for being here tonight. This is awesome.
Yeah, thank you, everybody.
Thank
A
you.
lot of fun.
Thanks for having me.
Fantastic.
So what's let's just start with Shannon. What's coming down the pipe for Shannon? What's new for Shannon?
I am writing a romantic series, romantic fantasy series, and the first 3 books are non-linear. So I'm like writing them, so they happen at the same time and they overlap with each other's stories. So I'm like writing 3 books at once.
And you got a release date for them, or
It's going to be next year. I don't have an exact date yet set because I have a launch plan that I don't want to share yet. But because if it doesn't work, I don't want to tell everybody.
Right.
So I do have a very specific launch plan that's going to require me to have at least those first 3 books done before I start. So I am.
How is it writing all 3 at once? How are you
It's
finding that?
difficult.
Oh, yeah.
So I was like, do a couple chapters here. Oh, I need some chapters here to make sure the timelines match up.
Sure.
So, yeah, but I'm hoping to have it by June next year is what I'm hoping for.
That's An interesting one, Margaret. It's going to be certainly challenging.
More Rhino characters.
Yeah, that's for a different show, and this is more of a family show, so I won't go there. And
Is that anything, Spud?
Are you talking about mine? Mine?
Are you talking about us or our books?
Yeah, that's what I was wondering.
I think we're talking about Shannon's books.
Romance. So they're gonna be clean fantasy. So closed door. I mean, there's definitely some like flirtation and kissing and sort of kissing because yeah. But my main character guys are dragons with ice breath, so they can't really kiss people.
Complex.
But yeah.
Margaret's wondering, so you're writing 3 books simultaneously. Are there different points of view?
They are. So it's 4 different brothers, and the 4th book will be it has to be read last because he's the reason why they were all cursed for the situation that they're in. So each book is on a brother's point of view, but they're constantly interwoven with each other in their own stories as they're finding their love.
And after finishing the 3 books, she needs to go on a retreat just to mend her mind.
So just to answer JD's question.
Yeah.
She was referring to the romance books, yeah.
Okay.
You're talking about the Rhino.
Yeah, it could have been.
A smutty,
I was
right?
talking about Dave and Hyperia and Dave there. But so where can we find your stuff, Shannon, other than the website just going across the screen at the bottom?
What was your question?
Where can we find your books other than
Yeah, so you can find them on Amazon. That's the only place I have them right now at this moment. I plan on taking them wide next year. So yeah.
So you're with KU right now?
Yes, it's in KU, Kindle Unlimited. Yeah, and it'll stay there. I'm actually going to put out a box set next month for the 3 books. So I'll keep all that in KU for about another year.
Right. Awesome. And how about you, JD? What's new for you?
I finished a horror short story collection in Spanish that is upcoming, and I'll tell you the name. It's called Penumbra. It's basically 1 short novella and 6 other short stories. A variety of styles within horror, but all like with my twist. I didn't go for any of the traditional things. I just wanted people to go, what the hell is going on? Actually, one appeared in one collection called No Cierre los Ojos, and another one in a Lovecraftian tribute that I was invited about 2 years ago. And I just wanted to get it to a wider audience. So I'm finishing that, doing edits on that. The beta readers, very different opinions. It was interesting. I was like, crap. I try not to get too many beta readers so that I don't get confused. But in this occasion, it's like, okay, I have to really read what each person has to say and then make decisions. So it's interesting. Apart from that, so that's horror. And yeah, it can be sometimes intense. So I'm obviously doing middle grade as another release that I'm doing. I have a collection of short stories called The Daydreams on the Sherbet Shore. They're little episodic stories that take place in the world of Draim. Draim is the dream world. I do use that concept in different places. The Sherbet Shore is like the central place where people meet and then they go to different locations. This began as little whimsical short stories, and then it evolved to become almost like get well letters. I have an author friend who was going to get gastric surgery a couple of years back, and she was kind of freaking out. So I wrote a little short story like about her tales and whatnot, and she appreciated so much. So that basically became the concept of that project. And during the month of October, I haven't done it yet, but I'll be reading from my rhymes from the Wicked Nursery because it's October, so let's have fun. And I'm also working on book 3 of The Human Cycle. People have been asking me for years. I finally have traction. People have been asking me for years. Emotionally, it's been a very intense write. Finally have momentum. Realize there's a lot of work to be done once I do that first draft. But I'm ready for it. And I'm actually also rereading Only Human and Shadow of a Human as I tie in loose ends. I wanted to do that, and I've invited anyone who wants to hop along and ask me anything that they want. If it's a spoiler, I'm not going to answer. If it's not a spoiler, I will answer. And if it's something of a discussion, I might do that. I don't think I'm going to do live readings, but I might change my mind.
Yeah, live readings are fun.
Yes, they are.
You can invite people on your panel to do it with you.
Yeah.
And where can we find your books, JD?
You can find my books on the Zon, and there's actually a local bookstore in Puerto Rico called Tazas y Portadas. Lovely people whom I'm extremely fond of. Right now, the only bookstore in Puerto Rico that has them. I'm not exactly sure how many copies they have of the books that I have over there, but I do have 5 titles, including nonfiction, poetry. Shadow of a Human is there, and Given to Fly, and all of those books I took one day, like 2 hours, uniquely dedicating all. There's a dedication in each book, and each one is different. So you're gonna get my awful calligraphy and a different message in each one.
That's awesome.
Great.
Yeah, I do that too. And sometimes it's funny if I don't pre-sign them. The odd time I'll open the book, they sign it to someone, like, oh crap, and then I can't remember exactly how the saying goes, and the odd time I'll sign it wrong, and I just pretend that that's right, and away we go. But some people are going to actually have a rare book because it's going to be signed differently than all the rest. But
that's going to be worth money.
Yeah, that's right.
But they should keep it. They should treasure that.
Well, they don't know, so anyway. So what's new with Christy before we leave?
I have the next episode of Corrupted Magic that just published yesterday, and it is called The Sin Eater. So things are really ramping up. They're getting intense. So if you're on my Patreon, you already had access to it on Friday. And if you're on Kindle Vella, then you got access on Monday. So I hope you guys are enjoying the story. It seems like you are. Thank you to those reading it. And I'm still, a number of episodes ahead. Things are going to get really crazy. So make sure you are keeping up. And that's really what's new with me. How about you, David?
Well, I'm still working on the second Hyperia Jones book.
You're building Rhino. Come on.
More Hyperia. I'm afraid you don't make it to the second book, Richard.
You haven't written a book. You didn't write a word all week. You've been working on spiders and rhinos.
Is there a rhino in the second one?
Sorry?
Is there still a rhino in the second one? I hope.
Yes, there is.
He has to make all the costumes too for a second book.
Yes.
Who doesn't make it, I'm afraid it is Richard in the second book.
Richard in his papery skin.
Yes, I didn't make it. I died of old age.
So the rest of the crew are in there, plus other people, and lots more silliness. It really gets silly. Lots. And other than that, I'm about to start doing the second draft of Logan's World 3.
Cool. That's great.
So I'll be starting that in about a week or so.
Awesome.
Nice.
How about yourself, Richard?
Yeah, no, I'm still taking a bit of time off since I just published Windwalker on September 16th. What I'm doing is I'm compiling a list of every character that gets mentioned in the Soulforge universe, and I cannot believe what a daunting prospect that is. I got sheet after sheet after Excel spreadsheet full of these things, and then my wife wants to answer these on my website afterwards. So every little minor character will be on there. If they got a name, then they are listed on this thing. And so it's actually kind of neat because it's really reminding me of all these minor characters that have come and gone, and I forgot the little roles that they play and actually how they trigger certain things that happen. So it's actually fueling my muse and putting more ideas in my head, just seeing all these minor characters. But that's what I'm doing now, and I'm getting ready to do a 4-day book signing event this weekend. It's at the Rockton World's Fair in Ontario, Canada, and this fair is in a little town, but it's massive. So I'm hoping for a good turnout, and we'll sell lots of books. But that's about it for me. I probably won't be starting on When Legends Rise until next week or the week after. But yeah, which is longer? The list of Soulforge characters, or it's just the list of Soulforge characters. Absolutely, I'm still going. I still have a couple more books to go through, but. Anyway, thank you again, JD and Shannon, for being on. We really enjoy doing the live reads with you, and
thanks.
We'll get you guys on again at some point in the future. Thank you for being with us tonight.
Thank you for this awesome format.
Cheers.
Thank
No,
you.
you're welcome. And so for Christy, Dave, and myself. Oh, sorry, I need to mention. I'm back in character. I need to mention next week's guest is urban fantasy author DC Gomez. I don't have a lot of information on DC Gomez, so just stay tuned. Look for the post on Facebook coming out sometime tomorrow, and we'll get a better write-up for DC, I hope. So until next week, take good care.
Thank you. Good night, everyone.